So I want to welcome everybody tonight to Massanutten Regional Library's annual Deyerle Program Series on local history. Programs on local history and culture presented by local authorities in their fields. This fall, we are focusing on topics in preservation and conservation in the Valley. The Deyerle Program Series on local history honors Dr. Henry Price Deyerle, a local physician, and his wife Mary, who was a nurse. As early collectors of antiques and artifacts produced in the Shenandoah Valley, the Deyerles were instrumental in raising awareness of and research into the valley's rich cultural history. In honor of their parents, the Deyerle children have supported Massanutten Regional Library for almost 20 years in this program, and it is because of them that this lecture series is made possible. Tonight, our program is NENA, Preserving Our Community, and I will introduce our speaker in just a minute. But a few reminders, there are 3 more programs in this series. So next Thursday, October 14th at 7 o'clock, we will have Miriama Dryak from the Friends of the North Fork of the Shenandoah River, who will discuss how Valley residents can preserve this natural resource treasure. And her topic, or the title of her program, is Conserving and Protecting the River, Your Role and Ours. Thursday, October 21st, again at 7 p.m., our program is Preserving with Pots, the Importance of Collections and Archives, with Dr. Scott Suter, a professor of English at Bridgewater College. He will explore the importance of preserving artifacts and collections and discuss his new book, A Potter's Progress, Emmanuel Suter and the Business of Craft. Our final lecture in the series is on October 28th at 7 p.m. It's called Voices in the Silence, Locating and Preserving. Dr. Shane McGarry, Assistant Professor of Geophysics at James Madison University, explains his research and the use of ground-penetrating radar to identify the location of unmarked antebellum African American cemeteries. All of these programs will be presented live via Zoom. You can pre-register, as you all have, by visiting mrlib.org and going to our events calendar. Tonight's session will be recorded and available on our MRL YouTube channel as well. So just a few Zoom housekeeping tips. This is a webinar format, so attendees will remain muted and you won't see yourselves either. But as you think of questions during the program, please type them in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen, and I will share them with Karen during the Q&A portion of the program. And now let me introduce tonight's speaker. Ms. Karen Thomas is the founder and president of the Northeast Neighborhood Association of Harrisonburg, NENA. It is the mission of the Northeast Neighborhood Association of Harrisonburg to make the neighborhood a secure, attractive, and strong community. The association engages in partnerships with community residents and families, government officials and departments, and non-governmental agencies and institutions to revitalize the neighborhood and to address the needs of the residents of the community. Under the leadership of Ms. Thomas, the Northeast Neighborhood Association has held public meetings at the Lucy F. Sims Center on the 3rd Thursday of every month. NENA leads African American historical preservation and cultural heritage projects in Harrisonburg, Virginia. And now I'm going to turn the program over to you, Karen.
Oh, thank you, Susan. And I'd like to thank all of you for coming. And I'd like to thank Susan and the Massanutten Regional Library for inviting me here to speak about the Dallard-Newman House in the Newtown Cemetery, and all of you for your interest in that. So I believe I'm going to start with the Dallard-Newman home. So the Dallard-Newman home was constructed in 1895. If you can look at your right top of your screen, that's a picture of the home and the church. It was constructed in 1895, excuse me, by Ambrose and Reuben Dallard. They were former slaves, and it is from the riverbank plantation. The Dallard-Newman House is one of the city's oldest and most enduring monuments to African American culture and heritage. The building constructed by the former slaves is a fascinating record of urban life in this community. And is the founding of the first educational institutions for persons of color, and the development of the thriving community of the Northeast neighborhood, which at that time was called Newtown. So I see that Susan has already introduced NENA and our mission. So next slide. The Northeast Neighborhood Association is also involved with the historic Newtown Cemetery. And in July of 2021, NENA received, in partnership with the historic cemetery from the Department of Historic Resources, we applied for the Virginia Historical African American Graves Fund grant of $2,060 to support the care and preservation of 412 graves at this National Historic Site. And we like to thank and acknowledge Ms. Carol Nash, Professor Carol Nash, for all her help in getting that plan. In August of this year, recently, NENA received $250,000 in funding from the American Rescue Plan in the category of tourism to be administered through the Department of Historic Resources and the City of Harrisonburg, which was approved in 2021. The funds will support the renovation and expansion of the historic Dallard-Newman House to open as a museum of African American history and culture. The building is a registered National Historic Landmark in 2017, as well as the Virginia Landmark in 2017. We'd like to thank Virginia Delegate Tony Wilt in representing Harrisonburg. He was instrumental in making this a reality. In the coming months, NENA will break ground on the first stage of the renovations at the Dallard-Newman House. The building will be raised up and the sunken 19th century foundation will be fixed and replaced with a modern stem wall for the foundation while preserving the original built flooring and facing. This will give the house a more solid structure to bear upon and will prevent future settlement and shifting. The wooden floor system of the main ground floor would be reinforced and necessary replacement boards will be carried out to allow for activity, more activity on the flooring. NENA has been participated in the Great Community Give for the last 5 years. And in 2021, 73 generous donors raised $8,300 to support the capital campaign for the historic Dallard-Newman House. We thank the Community Foundation for all their work and the generous donors of the Community Foundation that helped us to purchase the home. Also in 2020, the Virginia State Archaeologists awarded NENA a $5,200 grant to conduct first excavations on the property of over 100-year-old Dallard-Newman House. These revealed fascinating discoveries just underground, including children's toys, kitchenware, and a brick pathway seen below. This points to the incredible wealth of objects still to be found and the untapped potential here to learn new things about local African-American history in the Northeast neighborhood. Dr. Dennis Blatton, archaeology professor at James Madison University, seen at left, led the excavations joined by community members and local students. Also in 2021, campaigning for Lieutenant Governor Hala Alaya came to visit the Dallard-Newman House. We gave her a tour of the Dallard-Newman House and also the Newtown Cemetery.
Wow. Karen, do you want me to put up the next?
If no one has any questions on the Dallard-Newman House, we can go right to the Newtown Cemetery.
Sure. Well, we can do questions now. Yeah. If you have questions about the Dallard-Newman House, if you want to type them into the Q&A, then we can see, Karen can try and answer them. I actually have one is, oh, look, well, here, we've got the first one. What is the history of the building and when was it originally built, the Dallard-Newman House?
It was originally built in 1895 by former slaves that were freed from the Riverbank Plantation in Elton, Virginia. They came to Harrisonburg to make a new town, a new start. And that's how Newtown got its name. The building, the church, the building, the Dallard-Newman House, and also the church was built by these two brothers, which they were carpenters. And they have very similar, the Dallard-Newman House has very similar looks as some of the stairwells and different carpentry that is in the Riverbank plantation, because they built that also.
Okay. On the last slide, there was a kind of a mock-up, and there was a enclosure, it looks like, that's going to be on the side of the house. What do you envision that being?
Well, that was the expansion of the Dallard-Newman House.
Okay.
That we are planning for, and that will not have any effect on the historical significance at all. Julie Langland, also from the Department of Historic Resources, has visited the home and is very impressed with the renderings that we have shown them of what our plans are from the home, for the home.
And when do you think the museum will be open to the public? Do you have
Well,
a timeline?
now that we're hoping with this new developments, which that's going to take a little time, you know, with logistics to have to work out, we're hoping in the spring of 2022.
Ooh.
Which could take up, you know, it could take us up to 23, but we've been working on this for the last 3 years. So we're kind of just ready to go forward with it.
Okay. So you talked a little bit about the addition. So is that the only addition that you're going to have to do to the building, or you plan on doing to the building, the one we saw in the last slide?
No, that's the only addition that we're planning on for the back of the home.
And when was the house last lived in?
And I believe the house was last lived in 2015.
Okay.
When Miss Carlotta Newman Harris lived there. She was the last living descendant of the Newman family that lived there. And she passed away there in 2015 at 103.
Oh my, okay. So it had been passed down through the same
family. Yes.
All right.
The Dallards built homes for all their daughters that once they got married, they built homes for them. And I believe this was like one of the last ones standing that was able to, that made it through the urban renewal project.
All right. So none of the other ones survived that you know of?
No.
Okay. Will the house serve as a repository for collections, or will there be separate storage for items not on exhibition? So I guess, like, will you have, sure. Will the house serve as a repository for collections, or will you store things off-site if they're not being exhibited?
No, it will serve as a repository for collections. Yes, it will.
Okay. And do you anticipate it being a research space as well as an exhibit space?
Yeah, it will be a research space. We're expecting to have a library space. We're expecting to have, you know, all kind of history, not only about the Dallards and the Newmans, but also the community.
Okay. Have you started to collect artifacts from the community?
Yes, we have.
Yeah. Where are you storing them now? You don't have to tell us.
Right. No. No, I won't tell you that now.
They're in a secret vault somewhere.
Right.
Okay. If people have things that they think you might be interested in, are you ready to get in touch with them, or should the community?
Yes, they can get in touch with NENA at our website, well, actually at our email, or they have my phone. You can get my phone number.
Okay. Okay. And we have a general question. When was NENA founded?
NENA was founded in 2006.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. Do you want to talk a little bit about
October 2006? Yeah.
Okay. All right. So those are our questions right now. So we can move to Newtown if you're ready for that. So let me do that. Bring up. Where's my Newtown? There it is. Okay.
All right. So establishing a graveyard for all persons of color was the reason the first acts of the residents of Newtown. In 1869, they paid $225 for less than an acre of land, which was considerably more for charge than their white neighbors. Today, the cemetery stands on 3.9 acres and includes over 900 burials. It's reached this size with 4 land purchases by the cemetery trustees between 1869 and 1920. All standing stones are mapped. And we give a lot of that credit to Professor Carol Nash and her students that did all the mapping for Newtown Cemetery. Newtown Cemetery has had a significant number of military burials and has held Memorial Day commemorations since the early 1930s, Veterans from World War I and II, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, as well as retired military personnel are honored there. There may be 3 members of the United States Colored Troop from the Civil War buried there. Significant historical and regional figures buried at Newtown are, of course, our beloved Miss Lucy Sims, Ulysses G. Wilson, Mr. George Newman, Miss Roberta Webb, Mr. Elin Rhodes, which was the first African-American council person, Ambrose Dallard, who helped build the Dallard-Newman House and the Bethel AME Church, Dr. Eugene Doc Dickerson, and our beloved Miss Doris Harper Allen, that has recently had a hall named after her at James Madison University. NENA, along with the Newtown Cemetery, the Newtown Cemetery was added to the Virginia Landmarks Registry in 2014 and the National Register of Historic Places in 2015. This was done by the Northeast Neighborhood Association and Professor Carol Nash. In 2015, the Department of Historic Resources approved a higher weight marker for Newtown Cemetery, and it stands on the corner of Hill and Kelly Streets. In 2020, the Newtown Cemetery and the Northeast Neighborhood Association applied for the Historical African American Graves Fund. And our first request was approved for repairing and resetting headstones that require attention. And as a matter of fact, that has just happened this week. We had several of the tombstones repaired and cleaned by Hartman Memorials of Harrisonburg. And this is, again, Lieutenant Governor candidate Hala Alaya visiting Newtown with me. I gave her a tour and she was really interested to see the tombstone in the tree. And that is something that, a tombstone that we'll probably never know whose it is. And this is the beautiful historic Newtown Cemetery. This is one of the older lots on the south side.
All right, and that was the last slide.
That was
the last slide.
Okay. So the Newtown Cemetery, like I said, it was bought in 1869 from 4 of our trustees that were living at that time because they wanted to have a place to put people of color. I think what was happening, during that time, we had to be buried in our backyards or wherever they could. So this was really a great thing for them to do for us. And we, we here now have to continue on keeping the cemetery up and honoring it.
All right. And there's a couple of questions. So are there still, I think you touched on this a little bit, but are there still burials going on at the cemetery?
Yes, there are. We still have some room left. And
okay. And is there a separate corporation or governing body for the cemetery?
no, it's just, no, we're the Newtown, I'm a secretary of the Newtown trustees. I'm a trustee member, and there never has been another other governing body. The Northeast Neighborhood Association is like their fiscal agent for raising money and doing things like that for them.
Let's see. Do you have to request each tombstone separately for repair? Is one of the questions.
No, what they do, the African American Graves Fund will give you $5 per stone for, for each grave. And it has to be, I believe, before 1900.
Oh.
So when Professor Nash was doing the mapping for us, she was able to recognize 412 graves, but we're sure there are more there. And they also have the ground penetrating radar survey that they will be looking for more, and hopefully next year we will be able to get more done.
Okay. Let's see. You mentioned that African Americans were buried in backyards previously. Have these burials been identified, and potentially would the remains be able to be moved to the Newtown Cemetery?
No.
Okay. On the 1870 map, can you show what was lost to the 1950 renewal? So I can bring that back up. Let's see if I can do this. Newtown share. Okay. So Karen, can you tell,
well,
this was, so the Hilltop Farm is
right. Well, I'm sure, really a lot of this was lost. I don't really know what this map, but so much was lost in this community as far as homes and businesses and farms. So there's really nothing that I can point out to show you that was actually lost.
Right. Kelly Street is still there, but this was all the Gray's farm,
streets,
correct?
Yeah.
And
so
Johnson
the streets are still here.
But the buildings are not
the buildings are gone. I mean, they raised over 100 homes and businesses.
Yeah.
Then, so.
Okay. All right. So let's see if there's another question here. Let's see. Okay. Was the cemetery ever in danger of being removed or destroyed by that urban renewal? Was that ever something that was discussed?
Not that we know of.
Okay.
No.
All right. And you kind of touched on this about how many homes were destroyed in the Northeast neighborhood due to the so-called neighborhood revitalization in the 1960s. So you said over 100.
It was over 100, yes.
Yeah. And it was homes and businesses, and it was just raised.
Yes.
Okay. Are there any African-American graves at Woodbine Cemetery? Was there any overlap?
I have heard that there were maybe a few, but as far as I know, they have not been identified. Okay.
All right. Can you talk a little bit about the process of actually applying for all the recognition for the register for the historic preservation and being on the National Register? Like, how long did that process take you, and what kind of documentation did you have to provide?
Well, we had to provide as much. It's a whole lot of information that you have to provide, and you have to prove that you have to show that this was done, like in the 1800s, things that were done back then. We had to come up with dates and names of people. We had to show that it was ready for recognition from the Department of Historic Resources.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and what kind of research did you do? Did the family
we
have any documentation?
You went through the cemetery and documented the graves
Oh my goodness.
that were there, and the times that the people were born and when they passed, and things like that. So it was a lot of documentation that took place to get that done. And then we had to go, after all the paperwork, then you go to Richmond and you speak, to the board, the Virginia Landmarks Review Board. And then they make a decision whether to pass it on. And they agreed with both properties. Actually, NENA has gotten 3 properties on the National Register, which is of course, the Dallard-Newman Home and the Bethel AME Church, which actually is a historic district, those two together. We've had 3 with the Newtown Cemetery marker, the Dallard-Newman House, the Bethel AME Church, and also the Charlotte Harris marker that's on Court Square. Okay, you guys you're killing it. This is awesome. Yeah, we tried to preserve all this history. There's a lot to preserve. That's and wonderful. It takes a lot of time and energy and research.
So who did all that research? Did you get community help? Did you?
Well, we get community members. We had a committee with the Charlotte Harris, is Truth and Reconciliation and Remembrance Committee. That worked on that. We had help from Dr. Carol Nash with the Newtown Cemetery. We even hired a person by the name of Dan Mazzoni to come in from the Department of Historic Resources to help with the Dallard-Newman House and the Bethel AME Church, and Randy Jones with the Department of Historic Resources. So yes, it's not something that 1 or 2 people can do. It takes a lot. Yeah. Okay. So there are a couple more questions came in. You mentioned that there are potentially more burials in Newtown, and they are assuming that they do not have tombstones. Are there thoughts to try and acknowledge with some sort of tombstone that these burials existed if you find them with the radar? What are your plans to kind of mark those? With the ground penetrating radar system, yes, we plan to. We also believe that there are tombstones that probably are in the ground that we can bring up and have them repaired so we'll know who they are. Right. But if we can't, we will have something to show where the graves are and identify them. We also have a tombstone at the top of the first portion of the Kelly Street portion of the cemetery, which was funded by the Harrisonburg Rotary Club, and it's called for the known and unknown. Oh, okay. So. All right. And you mentioned that there are some potential colored troops buried there. Are those known marked burials? No, they're not. Okay. Not at this time, they're not. Okay. And then somebody had a question about the urban renewal. What happened to those who lost their homes? Did they stay in Harrisonburg or move somewhere else? Most of the people that I know of that lost their homes, most of the families moved away. Nothing was ever the same for those people. Some of those people passed away. It was just too much for them to take. And a lot of this community has still never gotten over that. Okay. Did you use any church records to match to the tombstones or the burials? No, there really weren't any records in the churches that we looked at, or in our community churches, which would be, the ones here in the community. No, we didn't.
And you talked about more archaeological explorations to be done in the future. What can you tell us about that? So I guess I want a little bit
Well,
more information.
when we start the construction, the outside construction on the Dallard-Newman House, Dr. Dennis Blanton is going to continue his archaeology digs over there. And we feel like we just went, with what we have found so far, we just went up under the ground a little bit.
Mhm.
There's so much more in that backyard and under the house that we can find.
What's the most interesting thing he found?
Well, I guess that depends on who you ask, but to me, I think the most interesting thing was some bed rails, some really, really different little things that go on under your bed.
Okay.
I didn't know what they were, but that's what he said they are.
Okay.
So,
All right. And was
it's
he
not rails, it's just like a I'm not sure what you would call it, like a bracket off some very, very old bed.
okay. Was it for a child's bed or for an adult?
We don't know. But I know there, and then like some of the little toys that you see that he found that were on the slide, you just don't see things like that anymore.
Yeah. Was there much left in the house when you all got ownership of it?
When we were able to take ownership of it, there is some original furniture there, like George Newman's original desk. They left that there for us. There is some original dressers upstairs, and a couple chairs and a sofa.
Oh, wow. Okay. Let's see. Oh, sorry. Questions are moving. Is there anything the city or state could do now to make restitution to those who were displaced by urban renewal?
Well, I think there should be, but that's not what I'm really here to talk about.
Okay. So between the Newtown and the Dallard-Newman House, which was the more difficult, do you think, to get on the historic register? Which took more time?
I would say the Dallard-Newman House took more time because we also included the church that the Dallard brothers built. So that's why it's a historic district there. I think that took a little more time.
Okay. And so they built the church and the home.
Yes.
At the same time, or?
No, the home was built in 1895, and I believe the church was built first, like in 1890, maybe a few years earlier.
And the house wasn't officially affiliated with the church in
that house wasn't at that time, because they had built other homes in the area that didn't survive the urban renewal.
Okay. All right. So when you get the Dallard-Newman plans going, or the Dallard-Newman House up and running, actually I'll hold my question. And somebody wanted to know if you could tell us a little bit more about Mr. Newman and his family and his significance in the community.
Well, Mr. Newman, it was
more Mr. Dallard was the builder. Mr. Newman lived in the house, correct?
Yeah, Mr. Newman actually was Ambrose's son-in-law. He was the one that established the local congregation and constructed the revival style building on the land donated by Ambrose Dallard. He also was he was a principal. He was insurance. He was a businessman. He was one that everybody went to. He was a very educated man. He had traveled a lot. So everyone went to him in the community. They trusted him. He paid tithes for people and taxes and helped them with legal things. So yeah, Mr. Newman was a very prominent person in the community.
Are there any photos of the Dallards or the Newmans that survive or that you have?
Yes, they are. They're
Are they?
I believe if you go on our website, there's some photos of them. We had a brochure out about preserving the African American history in the Dallard-Newman home, and there are photos on that of George Newman, Miss Carlotta Newman, and her husband, Mr. Harris, the family portrait of Mary Dallard and George Newman. So, we have photos of them.
Okay.
If anybody would like to have some, email me. I'll send them to you.
Are there any other potential areas, buildings in the neighborhood that you're thinking about trying to preserve actively? And then a second part of that, that could be, or that could be worth an archaeological dig or preservation?
Well, I'm pretty sure there are. At this present time, our priority is the Dallard-Newman House. And we'll be working on that. NENA also has acquired the Miss Roberta Webb's original home.
Okay.
And so we'll be working on a lot of things. But right now, our priority is the Dallard-Newman House.
Okay. So you have a timeline, hopefully spring 2022, correct? Still?
Correct.
Okay. All right. And will you be doing programming there too? Will you have a programming space?
Yeah, there will be programming, there will be tours, there will be like any cultural museum, to come in and find out some of the history of the community.
Okay, wonderful. The Preservation Office at JMU would be happy to consult on storage and handling for if you have any questions. So that was an offer that came through the question box. So the Preservation Office at JMU. So there you go.
And we will gladly accept that.
That's right. That's okay. All right. So the Newtown Cemetery is still an active burial space.
Yes, it is.
How I know it's October, we're getting to Halloween. So how much space is left in the cemetery for burials, for active burials still?
No, I'm not good with figures like that, but I would say maybe we have a half an acre left.
Okay. Is there, do you have to be on a list to be buried there?
No.
So you contact the trustees basically at the time. Okay. All right. So that's always, and what are your plans to put a gate around the edges, or what are your other plans for that space?
For the cemetery?
Yes.
Yeah, we would like to have some protective barrier around the cemetery. We've been working on that for quite some time. We were able to get the alleys paved. So, and then we're hoping to get a protective barrier around it also.
Okay. All right. Is there anything else you want to share with us this evening? We've got, and if anybody else has any more questions, we've got a little bit of time. So we're still.
I think that's about all I have.
You guys,
I hope I was able to give some history of it, but, I hope that, you all will come by the Dallard-Newman House Museum when we open. Of course, that'll be, announced for a soft opening to see exactly what we're doing. And so we're really excited about this. So we never gave up. We've been working on this for a long time. Well, the last 3 years. So
yeah, it sounds like it's a long process with a lot of documentation and a lot of research. And I think that's important to remember, is just how much research goes into this whole process. And
of course, fundraising, we can't leave that out. That's been a
long
time too, so.
That's it. And do you take volunteers for things like this? Do you need volunteers?
Right now we're thinking we don't really want too many volunteers at one time. Well, we can always use volunteers for fundraising. but right now we have already hired an architectural firm
Mhm.
in Harrisonburg to look at the work that needs to be done.
Okay. And the walking tour that includes the cemetery is really informative. Can you tell us a little bit about that, the walking tour?
Um,
I think that it might be the deep run routes that they're talking about.
okay, yeah, I have no
Okay.
idea about that.
And I think that's out of the Shenandoah Valley Black Heritage Project. There's a walking tour of of historic sites in the neighborhood.
Right.
And so it's a different organization.
Yes.
But it's a wonderful tour. And you can go online and do that. Did you all have to write up anything for them to
No, I
include?
don't. I have no idea where they got their information
Okay,
from.
well, we'll ask Robin. So yeah, but there is, and the Dallard-Newman House is on that tour as well.
Oh,
So it
okay.
has some information about the house. Do you know anything else about the Dallard family? About what they did? I know you said they were on River Run Plantation and they were carpenters.
Yeah, Riverbank Plantation.
I'm sorry, thank you, River Bank Plantation.
What they did, they served a lot in education, just as the Newman family did.
Okay.
But I mean, coming from out of slavery, they just built, the community. They really built most of Newtown.
Okay. Wow. And it was two
They
brothers that did primarily
farming. Yeah, they did farming, and things like that. So yeah.
Okay. And if somebody was interested in donating, how would they donate to your cause?
We can always take donations through the Community Foundation of Harrisonburg and Rockingham County. And you can always just send your donation straight to NENA at P.O. Box 1026, Harrisonburg 22803.
All right. Okay. All right. Well, Karen, thank you so much. We'll see if there's any other questions that come through, but the Dallard-Newman House looks beautiful and I've driven by it, so it looks lovely.
Right. Well,
it's very
it
exciting.
is lovely. It really is. And we hope to make it even more lovelier.
Yes. And I should say this was an excellent question. Does the library have any books available to read more about Newtown and Lucy Sims? And yes, we do. We carry the biography that was recently published by Dale McAllister, which Karen wrote the foreword for, on Lucy Sims. And we had a program on that in March, actually, and it is still on our YouTube channel. So if you're interested in Lucy Sims and education, particularly African-American education in the Valley, that was a great program we had in March. So you can check out our YouTube channel. And we also have books on Picturing Harrisonburg, which talks a little bit about some of the urban renewal and has lots of photographs. So yeah, definitely come check out your local public library. We've got lots of things to show you. And we've got a thank you to you, Karen and NENA, for the hard work in preserving the history of that area, because it is so important. So thank you from your community.
Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you all. Thank you all for your support.
Okay. All right. Well, again, thank everybody for being here tonight, and we'll be here if you have any more questions. And Karen, thank you so much for joining us and telling us all about the process and what you're working on, and reminding us again how important this part of the community is to all of us and how we need to work to preserve it for everybody. And
yes, it is. It's for the entire city.
Yeah. So, okay. All right. I'm giving everybody, this is it. This is the last call. Okay. Well, thank you all for joining us this evening. And again, I hope to see everybody again next week when we talk a little bit about natural preservation of our natural resources. So particularly the North Fork of the Shenandoah Valley. So, and we are happy to do this. We thank the Deyerles for their support and our community for supporting us and our partners.
All right.
Well, thank you all. Have a great night. And again, I'm recording this. It'll be up hopefully Monday. Give us some time to get it put together. So remind everybody that they can come look at it. You can look at it again, tell your friends. But thank you. And thank you, Karen. Okay. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.